AITA for bringing attention to my parents' favoritism of my sister in a public way. I grew up feeling like the forgotten one in my family, always wondering if I was somehow different from my older sister Amy, who's now 17 while I'm 15. For as long as I can remember, Amy has been the one that got everything, the attention, the love, the praise, and just more. It felt like she was the daughter they wanted, and I was just there, like some extra kid they had to put up with. I have no idea why this is the way it is, but over the years, it's become painfully obvious to everyone around us, including my friends, some extended family, and even a few of my friends' parents. They've all seen it. I think some of them feel bad for me. I feel bad for me too, honestly. I mean, Amy has always been the center of their world. Even when we were little, I noticed how everything seemed to revolve around her, like she was the sun in our family universe, and I was just some distant star they barely noticed. Take summer camp, for instance. Every year, my parents would sit her down in the spring and have a long talk about camp options. They'd bring out brochures and websites, talking through all the choices. They'd ask her what sounded fun, what kinds of activities she wanted to try, and then they'd make it happen. She was never told no. Every summer, without fail, she got to go exactly where she wanted. Whether it was an arts camp, a sports camp, or even a theater program one year, my parents would sign her up, no questions asked. They made sure she had the best experiences, each year giving her something new to look forward to. Me, I didn't get that kind of attention. Some years, they sent me to the local day camp, the free one down the street. I know it wasn't the same as the camps Amy got to attend, but I tried to make the most of it. The kids there were nice enough, and the counselors did what they could with the limited budget. It was just different. No horseback riding, no sailing, none of the activities I heard Amy talking about when she got home from her camps. She'd come back each day with stories of her fun adventures, all these cool friends she made, while I sat there, trying to act interested but feeling a little jealous. And then, some years, I didn't even get to go to camp at all. I'd stay at home with nothing to do but watch Amy pack her bags with excitement and come back each night brimming with stories. I'd listen, of course, nodding along, but inside I felt this ache that was impossible to ignore, this longing to have even a fraction of what she had. And it wasn't just camps, the differences showed in other ways, too. I remember the year Amy turned 8, and they surprised her with a bedroom makeover. They turned her room into this pink wonderland, decked out with everything she'd ever dreamed of. It was like stepping into one of those rooms you see on TV that only the luckiest kids get. She got to pick out her favorite color, of course, it was pink, and they bought her a brand new bed with these plush pillows and a bedspread covered in her favorite characters. They even gave her a desk so she could do her homework in style, and right on top of it was a brand new computer. She got a TV, too, mounted on the wall like in a hotel room. I was floored. At just 8 years old, Amy had her own personal setup, and to top it all off, they added a mini fridge filled with all her favorite snacks, things like little soda cans, juice boxes, yogurt, even her favorite chocolates. Everything was designed to make her feel like a princess, a real-life princess in her very own kingdom. I watched all of this, wondering what my own birthday would bring. I was so excited, holding on to this hope that when I turned 8, maybe they'd do something similar for me. But when my birthday came, there was no bedroom makeover, no TV, no computer, no fridge. Instead, they handed me a small bag with a few old dolls. I could tell right away that they were from the thrift store, some of the exact same dolls I'd seen there before. Most of them were cheap ones I knew came from the dollar store, and some were broken, missing arms or with hair that looked like it had been yanked halfway out. I tried to be grateful, to smile and act happy, but it stung. I wanted so badly to have the same joy Amy did when she got her big surprise, but it felt impossible when I looked at those sad, broken dolls. As we got older, it was like the differences between us just kept growing. Amy was always getting little treats, a pizza night here, Taco Bell there. They'd tell her it was because she was such a good daughter or their special girl. It didn't even have to be a big occasion. It was just their way of showing her love. At least 3 times a month, she'd get some fast food treat just for being herself. And I'd sit there, watching them praise her, thinking about how nice it must feel to be someone's special girl. I kept waiting for my turn, for that moment when they'd look at me the same way. I worked hard at school, doing my best to get good grades, sometimes even better grades than Amy, if I'm honest. But even then, my achievements didn't seem to matter. I'd bring home good test scores, and they'd just nod and say, "That's nice," and move on, while Amy's average grades would get her a trip for pizza or a night out. I started to wonder what more I could do, what magic words I could say, or what incredible thing I'd have to accomplish for them to see me the way they saw her. No matter what I tried, it was like I was invisible. The little treats, the rewards, the love, they just weren't meant for me. And it wasn't just with grades. Anytime Amy did well on a test, my parents would make a big deal about it. They'd plan something special, maybe a trip to her favorite restaurant, or an outing to buy her a little gift, just something to make her feel special, to show her they were proud. She'd come home with a big grin, knowing she'd get showered with attention for her work. She'd hand over her test paper with this look of expectation, and without fail, they'd reward her with all the praise and attention anyone could want. It didn't even have to be perfect scores. Sometimes, she'd get a B or a C, and they'd still find something to celebrate. They'd say things like, "Good effort, Amy," or "You did your best, and we're so proud of you." When I brought home a test I'd worked hard on, I'd have to wait for them to notice. I'd slide my paper onto the kitchen counter, hoping they'd see it when they walked by. Occasionally, they'd glance at it, sometimes with a nod, maybe a quick, "That's nice," and that would be it. No dinner out, no ice cream, no gift or special treat. Not even an extra 5 minutes of their time. It was almost like they couldn't see me standing there, waiting for that little bit of praise. I tried to tell myself I didn't need it, that I could be proud of myself without their approval, but after a while, it became harder to keep convincing myself. It felt lonely. I'd listen to Amy talk about her little rewards, about the dinner they'd planned for her, or the new book they'd bought her as a treat, and I'd feel this heavy pit in my stomach, wondering why I didn't deserve the same. I know I'm supposed to be happy for Amy, and I tried, I really did. But it was so hard to keep pretending that I didn't want even a fraction of that same love, too. I wanted just once to know what it felt like to have someone look at me with that same pride in their eyes. I wanted them to say they were proud of me, not just in a passing comment but with real feeling, like it meant something to them. I thought maybe one day they'd see how hard I was trying, that they'd realize I was there, too. But no matter how well I did, they just moved on like my efforts were invisible. And then there was the conversation about our futures. One day, I overheard my parents talking to Amy in the kitchen. They were telling her about the money they'd saved for her, how they wanted her to go to any college she dreamed of. They told her how they didn't want her to worrying about student loans, that they'd be there to support her, to make sure she could focus on following her dreams. I could see the look on Amy's face as she listened. She was thrilled, confident in their love and support. She knew they had her back, that she could go out into the world without any fears of being on her own. They told her all of this when she was 15. And now, here I am at 15, and they've never once had that talk with me. There's been no mention of money saved, no conversations about my future, no encouragement that they'd be there to support me when it's my turn to head out into the world. I wanted to ask them about it, to know if they'd saved anything for me, too. But by now, I already know what they'll say. I doubt they've set aside anything for me. It's like they're planning for Amy's future and I'm just an afterthought. Like they don't expect me to have dreams worth supporting, or that I'll manage on my own somehow, without their help. A few times, I worked up the courage to bring up how this all made me feel. I tried to explain, to tell them how much it hurt to see the difference in how they treated Amy compared to me. Once, I even cried about it, hoping they'd finally see how deeply it affected me. I thought maybe if they saw my tears, they'd realize that I was hurting, that I needed them to show me they cared just a little bit. But my mom just looked at me, sighed, and told me to stop being childish. That was all she had to say. She brushed me off as if my pain was nothing more than an inconvenience, a minor annoyance she didn't have time for. It was like my feelings didn't matter, like I didn't matter. I've learned, over time, to stop expecting anything from them. To try to tell myself it doesn't matter, to try and act like I don't need anything from them, but it still hurts. I see how they are with Amy, how they look at her with love and pride, how they go out of their way to support her, and I know that I'll never have that from them. I'll never get that same look of pride, that same support, that same feeling of being cherished. Things came to a head last Saturday, at my dad's birthday party. It was a big gathering. Our house was filled with family, neighbors, and some of Dad's friends. The house felt warm and lively, the way it only does when we have people over. My parents had gone all out with decorations and food, making sure everything looked perfect, making sure everything was just right for my dad's big day. Amy, of course, was in the center of all of it, floating around and chatting with everyone. She seemed to light up the room, laughing with my dad, hugging relatives, talking about her latest achievements. And as always, my parents were right there beside her, beaming with pride, introducing her to people like she was the most incredible thing in the world. As the evening went on, my parents started talking about Amy's grades. They always seemed to bring it up at any opportunity, but tonight, in front of everyone, they were gushing. They went on and on, telling everyone about her report cards, about how well she was doing in her classes, about how she was excelling in everything. They called her their perfect girl. I remembered those words exactly, because they stung like knives. It wasn't even the first time I'd heard them say that, but hearing it in front of everyone, watching them look at her with so much pride and admiration, it hit me harder than ever. I felt this sharp ache, this bitterness, building up inside me. I thought maybe I could ignore it, push it down like I always did, but it was like something inside me just snapped. I don't know what came over me. One moment, I was standing there, silent, trying to act like it didn't bother me, and then the next moment, I heard myself speaking, my voice shaking with anger and sadness I couldn't hold back anymore. I blurted out, in front of everyone, how unfair it was, how they only ever talked about Amy, how they never mentioned my grades even though they were actually better than hers. It all came spilling out, years of pain and frustration and feeling invisible all bubbling over in a mess of words. I asked them right there, my voice probably louder than I intended, why they only talked about Amy, why she was their favorite, why I was never given even a fraction of the love and attention they gave her. The room fell silent. It was this awful, heavy silence, like the air had turned to lead. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, a mix of shock and discomfort. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst, and I was half wishing I could disappear right then and there. But at the same time, there was this strange sense of relief, like finally, I'd said what I'd been holding back for so long. The silence stretched on, and I started to regret saying anything, to wonder if maybe I should have kept it to myself, just buried it down deeper like I always did. But then my uncle, my dad's brother, spoke up. He said, out loud, that I had a point. I couldn't believe it. He actually said it. He said he'd noticed the difference, too. In that moment, I felt this strange mix of hope and fear. I felt hopeful because for the first time, someone was seeing what I'd been feeling for years. I wasn't just imagining it, someone else had noticed. But at the same time, I felt scared because I had no idea what my parents were going to say, how they'd react. And when I looked over at them, I could see it in their eyes, the anger, the embarrassment, the coldness. They were glaring at me with this look I'd never seen before, a look that made me feel like I'd done something truly unforgivable. After everyone left, my parents didn't waste any time letting me know exactly how they felt. They yelled at me for bringing it up, for making a scene in front of everyone, for embarrassing them on Dad's birthday. They told me I was out of line, that I'd ruined the evening, that I'd had no right to say those things. I tried to explain, to tell them that it was something I'd been feeling for a long time, but they wouldn't listen. They told me I shouldn't have tried to ruin Dad's special day, that I was selfish for making it about myself. They made it sound like I'd crossed a line just by asking for the same love they showered on Amy without question. Now, I'm left wondering if I really am AITA. Did I ruin everything by speaking up? Am I wrong for wanting what they give her so freely? My friends, some family members, even my friends' parents, they've all been supportive, telling me I'm not crazy, that I'm not imagining things. But my own parents, the two people who are supposed to love me the most, still treat me like I'm the extra kid they never wanted. Update. Later that week, still feeling the sting of my parents' anger from the party, I couldn't shake the need to understand, to get some clarity on why I was treated so differently from Amy. The questions swirling around in my mind felt like a storm I couldn't escape. Why had they never saved for my future? Did they even think about my future at all? Did they expect me to manage everything on my own, to struggle through my life without their help? It felt impossible that they could be so blatant in their favoritism, that they'd act like Amy was the only one with dreams worth supporting, while I was just left to fend for myself. It took me days to build up the courage, but eventually, I asked them if they'd saved any money for my college the way they had for Amy's. I tried to ask as calmly as possible, hiding the anger and hurt I'd carried since the party, but inside, my heart was racing. The thought of hearing them admit that they hadn't even thought about my future felt almost too painful to imagine, but I had to know. I needed to hear them say it, to know for sure if my suspicions were true. Their answer hit me like a punch to the gut. They told me that, since Amy was older, her situation had been more difficult, and that's why they'd started saving for her from a young age. They said that life was more challenging for Amy because she was the firstborn and that they'd had to focus on her needs. And just like that, they dismissed any thought of my future as if it were a trivial inconvenience, something I'd have to figure out on my own. They didn't seem to feel any remorse or guilt. It was as if this was the most normal explanation in the world. Amy's education mattered to them, but mine apparently didn't rank high enough on their list of priorities. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They said it so matter-of-factly, like it should make perfect sense, like I was supposed to just nod and agree. But all I could feel was a rush of anger and disbelief. I tried to wrap my mind around it, to understand why they thought Amy's path was harder than mine when they'd done everything for her. They had practically paved her road to success, supporting her every step of the way. They'd given her every opportunity and had put a cushion of love and security around her. Meanwhile, I had been left to figure things out on my own, without their guidance, without the reassurance that they'd be there to catch me if I fell. I felt a surge of resentment boiling up as I stood there, stunned into silence. They hadn't considered, even for a moment, that I would need help too, that I had dreams of my own, that I deserved the same chances they had given to Amy without question. In their eyes, Amy was the one who needed their love and attention, their financial support, their dedication. And I was just an afterthought. They hadn't thought about me, about my dreams, my future. I wasn't even on their radar. When I managed to find my voice, I told them I didn't understand how they could say it was more difficult for Amy. I reminded them that they'd done everything for her. They'd bought her new things, given her every advantage, and made sure her path was smooth. And even after all that, they'd saved up money just for her future, just in case she needed it. So why was it more difficult for her? Why hadn't they thought about doing the same for me, even a little? But they barely even listened, brushing off my questions like they were unimportant, as if my need for answers was nothing more than an irritation. They told me they weren't going to explain it further, that it wasn't my place to question their decisions. The indifference in their voices was staggering. It was as if they didn't care how hurt I was or how unfair it all felt. They had made up their minds long ago, and I was expected to simply accept it. I felt an overwhelming sense of betrayal. They had no intention of explaining why I was treated this way, no desire to even try to make me feel better or reassure me. They just left me standing there, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, feeling like I was somehow at fault for even questioning them. Their favoritism, which I'd always suspected but had tried to rationalize away, was now painfully clear. I'd spent years convincing myself that maybe I was overthinking it, that maybe I was just being sensitive, that they must love me just as much but showed it differently. But now, with their words still echoing in my mind, I couldn't ignore the reality anymore. They had made a conscious choice to prioritize Amy in every way that mattered, while I was left to figure out my own way in the world. They went on to say that they loved both of us equally, as if that statement alone could somehow erase the years of being ignored, dismissed, and overlooked. They said it like it should be obvious, like I was the one in the wrong for doubting them, like I was just being dramatic or unreasonable. But I knew, deep down, that it wasn't true. I knew that no matter what they said, their actions had shown me the truth over and over again. They didn't see me as their special girl. They didn't see me at all. I walked away from that conversation with a heavy heart, feeling like I'd lost something I'd never truly had. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity, like I could finally stop trying to prove myself to people who would never see me the way I wanted them to. It hurt more than I could ever put into words, but I knew that I couldn't keep letting their favoritism hold me back. I had to find a way to move forward, to find people who would see me for who I truly was, and for once, not feel like I was just an afterthought in my own family.